On the surface, this appears to be a routine off-season role. Caitlin Clark spending time recovering from last year's injury and picking up broadcasting work to remain connected to basketball. But a lot of you looked beyond the obvious. And you were completely right to question it, because what just happened is not about one athlete landing a TV job. This is about NBC challenging ESPN's 20-year grip on basketball coverage. And they just brought in the strongest possible figure in sports media. ESPN had the right to match any offer for the biggest name in basketball. Yet somehow NBC ended up with her. The real question is not why Caitlin Clark accepted the role. The real question is, how did ESPN allow this to slip away? Here is what we know. NBC did not bring Caitlin Clark in for a few guest spots. They created a brand new flagship show centered on her. Basketball Night in America is designed as a direct counterpart to their hugely successful Football Night in America. Networks do not launch a new primetime identity unless they plan to dominate that space. And the first-person audiences will see when the show premieres on February 1st. Caitlin Clark at Madison Square Garden before Lakers versus Knicks. This is not a test run. This is a clear message. If you believe the media power struggle behind this matters more than the headline, press release, hit the like button now. It shows you recognize what is really happening here. And we're about to connect every single piece over the next 15 minutes. Let's block out the noise and zero in on what actually matters. For more than 2 decades, ESPN has ruled basketball broadcasting. They control NBA rights. They lead WNBA coverage. When basketball takes place, ESPN is there, and everyone else fights for leftovers. That has been the situation until now. Because NBC did not just sign Caitlin Clark, they took her right out from under ESPN at the most crucial moment in women's basketball history. At the exact time the WNBA is surging in popularity. At the exact time Clark is at the height of cultural relevance. And while league contracts are being reworked, NBC is launching Basketball Night in America with the same structure, the same time slot, and the same goals as their football powerhouse. Maria Taylor, who already leads Football Night in America, will host the basketball edition. The studio team includes Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady. These are not trial hires. This is NBC's elite lineup, and they are placing Caitlin Clark right at the center for her first analyst role. February 1st is not just her introduction. It is NBC's first strike in a media battle ESPN did not anticipate. Here is where things get even more interesting. Clark is not appearing once and vanishing. She is set to return on March 9th for Thunder vs. Knicks. This is a continuing role, not a marketing trick. NBC secured her for several appearances during the NBA season, fully aware that her 2026 WNBA season does not begin until May, assuming the labor agreement is finalized. They are exploiting that window. While ESPN stays locked into existing WNBA deals, NBC is building a direct connection to the most compelling figure in basketball, creating a bond that could redefine coverage of the sport going forward. And we need to address the Michael Jordan comparison, because NBC made it themselves. Their press release directly stated that Caitlin Clark joins Michael Jordan as a major addition to their NBA coverage. Think about that implication. Jordan's role with NBC was limited. He was not a regular presence. He did not lead segments. Yet his name alone drove hype. NBC believes Clark's actual participation, her insight, her consistent presence will deliver far more impact. This is not just marketing language. They truly see her as having that level of influence. And based on the last 2 years, they might be correct. When you connect all the pieces, a bigger concern appears for ESPN. NBC does not only have Caitlin Clark for studio NBA segments. They also secured major WNBA broadcast rights for the 2026 season, which means when Clark returns to play in May, NBC will air her games. When she breaks down basketball from the studio, it will be on NBC. When she competes on the court, it will be on NBC. They have built a fully integrated Caitlin Clark media pipeline. ESPN is now locked out from the most valuable athlete in women's basketball history. You were right to notice how silent ESPN has been about this. No response moves, no major features, no attempt to distract with their own announcements. That silence says everything, because what could they possibly argue? They had every chance to make this exact play, and they chose not to. They relied on their legacy and relationships, believing they had time. NBC did not hesitate. They read the shift, understood Clark's unique value, and acted decisively while ESPN was still weighing risks. Sam Flood, NBC's executive producer, called Caitlin Clark one of the most captivating players and dynamic scorers in basketball. But notice what he did not say. He did not limit that praise to women's basketball. He said basketball as a whole. That difference is important. NBC is not framing Clark as a WNBA crossover voice. They are framing her as a basketball expert who happens to play in the WNBA. That perspective changes everything and creates opportunities ESPN never even considered. Clark herself appears genuinely excited, saying she is thrilled to join the Basketball Night in America team this season. And that makes sense. This is not a small network taking a risk on an emerging name. This is NBC, a massive broadcast platform, placing her alongside the same stage as Sunday Night Football, the most watched regular season program in American television. Her voice will reach millions of casual fans who may not closely follow the WNBA. That level of exposure cannot be bought. The timing is incredibly calculated for NBC. Clark is recovering from the injury that ended her 2025 season in July. She will not return to play until at least May 2026, but she remains visible and relevant through USA basketball duties, training camp visits, and now this major broadcasting position. NBC is essentially paying her to sharpen her media presence and grow her audience while she cannot physically compete. When she steps back onto the court, she will return as a more polished media figure with real broadcast experience. Everyone benefits except ESPN. And now I want your opinion. Leave a comment right now and tell me whether you believe ESPN intentionally passed on this move or if they were simply outplayed by a more aggressive rival. Because either outcome is huge. If they passed, it shows a massive failure to understand the future of basketball media. If they were outmaneuvered, it proves their dominance is weakening. Both possibilities should scare them. The February 1st launch date makes this even smarter. Lakers versus Knicks at Madison Square Garden is widely considered the biggest regular season NBA matchup possible. Two enormous market teams, legendary franchises competing in the most famous arena on the planet. And NBC is using that headline game as the launchpad for Caitlin Clark's analyst debut. Not a low-stakes weekday game in a quiet market. Not a comfortable soft entry where she can slowly adjust. They are placing her straight into the spotlight on the largest stage imaginable, trusting that her basketball intelligence and natural presence will instantly connect with a broad audience. The plan becomes even more obvious when you examine NBC's streaming strategy. All Basketball Night in America content will live on Peacock, NBC's premium streaming service. They have already shown this approach works when they placed exclusive NFL playoff games on Peacock, such as the recent Packers-Bears matchup. They generated huge subscriber growth. Now they are running the same Playbook for basketball using Caitlin Clark as the magnet to draw fans into their streaming ecosystem. ESPN has Disney Plus, but their basketball content is not locked exclusively to that platform. NBC is creating must-watch content that exists in only one location, and they are leveraging the most compelling personality in basketball to make it impossible to ignore. This moves us into speculation, but several sports media insiders are quietly discussing what may have happened behind the scenes. The rumor circuit suggests ESPN had talks with Clark's representation about a similar opportunity. Nothing confirmed officially, but the trail points toward a situation where ESPN treated this as a typical talent pickup while NBC framed it as a core investment in their entire basketball vision. One network saw a temporary analyst. The other saw the face of a brand new primetime property. That gap in perspective may explain why Clark ended up at 30 Rock instead of Bristol. Looking closely at NBC's press release reveals another key detail. They highlighted that Clark will appear alongside Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady, 3 Hall of Fame NBA legends, and Caitlin Clark. That choice is very deliberate. NBC is clearly placing her on equal footing with established basketball greats, not presenting her as a novelty or a diversity token or a WNBA figure included out of courtesy. She is there because NBC believes her basketball analysis can match Anthony Carter or McGrady. That is an enormous endorsement of her credibility as a basketball mind, not just her fame as a player. The business impact reaches far beyond these specific broadcasts. Clark's WNBA contract situation is currently uncertain because the new collective bargaining agreement has not been finalized. The February 15th deadline is approaching, and there is real doubt about when or how the 2026 season will begin. NBC bringing Clark into broadcasting during this uncertainty creates leverage. If negotiations stall, if the season is delayed, if any labor conflict arises, Clark still has a platform where she is earning money, building her brand, and remaining visible. ESPN does not have that kind of arrangement with any WNBA player. NBC has effectively created insurance for Clark and for themselves. Fans are piecing this together, and the discussion is intense. Social media is buzzing with theories about what comes next. Does Clark eventually move into full-time broadcasting after her playing days end? Does NBC lock her into a long-term deal that keeps her exclusive across game coverage and studio analysis? Does this partnership expand into something larger, like a production agreement or a signature show? The possibilities are wide open, and nearly all of them favor NBC while leaving ESPN on the sidelines. It is important to understand exactly what Caitlin Clark brings that makes her so valuable. Her basketball IQ is truly elite. She is not just a scorer or a highlight generator. She processes defenses, directs offenses, and understands the game at a depth most analysts spend decades trying to explain. When she breaks down a pick and roll, explains why a defense is rotating, or predicts how a team will adjust at halftime, she is speaking from real-time experience at the highest level. That is completely different from retired players analyzing a game they no longer play. Clark will be analyzing NBA strategy while actively preparing to apply similar concepts when she returns to the WNBA. That dual perspective is extremely rare and highly valuable. NBC is also betting on something ESPN appears to have missed. The WNBA is not just growing, it is surging. Attendance records were broken last season. Viewership doubled and tripled for major games. Merchandise sales exploded. And a major force behind that growth was Caitlin Clark's arrival and continued dominance. She did not just Increase interest. She redefined the standard for success in women's basketball. NBC recognized that momentum and moved to secure it. ESPN, despite holding more WNBA rights, either failed to see the opportunity or chose not to pursue it. Either way, that is a massive strategic mistake. The competitive landscape will shift dramatically when Basketball Night in America launches on February 1st. ESPN's Inside the NBA-style coverage suddenly faces a direct challenger with a huge promotional edge. NBC can promote Caitlin Clark's appearances across every one of their platforms. Sunday Night Football will advertise it. The Today Show will highlight it. Their entire broadcast machine will funnel viewers toward this new basketball program. ESPN cannot match that because they do not have a figure with Clark's level of cultural reach. They have strong analysts. They have iconic voices. But they do not have a player everyone wants to hear from right now. If this breakdown convinced you that basketball media power is shifting faster than expected, smash the subscribe button and turn on notifications because this NBC versus ESPN rivalry is just getting started. Clark's debut on February 1st will reveal whether NBC's risk pays off. We will analyze her on-air performance, audience response, and what it signals for the next phase of this media battle. You will not want to miss what happens next. Caitlin Clark's move to NBC is not a side story. It is the main event. ESPN ruled basketball media for 2 decades by controlling access, owning franchises, and spending more than anyone else. NBC just exposed the weakness in that model. When a transformational figure appears, and you hesitate, someone else will act decisively. Clark chose NBC because they offered something ESPN could not or would not. A platform built around her voice, her insight, and her influence. On February 1st, the world will watch to see if she delivers. And ESPN will watch to see exactly what they let slip away.